Before we get started on this loaf of bread, just a couple of things I want to tell you. I fed my starter yesterday. Today is Wednesday. I fed it on Tuesday afternoon and I put it in the refrigerator. And so it was bubbly and active and ready to go this morning. So I put it straight in the fridge after I fed it, and it had plenty of time to get active overnight. And so it's good to go. I fed it hard white wheat, and I have been feeding my starter a bit thicker than usual because I'm noticing that it just seems more active when I do that. So just to give you an idea, when you see my starter, you're going to say, wow, that is a thick starter. But that's just something that I'm trying right now. Since we're measuring this in grams, it won't make a big difference. If your starter is quite a bit more hydrated than mine, your dough may be a bit more tacky, but I don't think it's going to make a huge difference because I've made it with thin starters and with a thick starter, and it seems to turn out the same every time. Number two, I got this question a few times about if you don't have a Banneton basket. I answered it, but I want to make sure I make it clear that you can use a medium-sized colander with a tea towel in it that is liberally dusted with flour. That will work just fine. You want a colander because you want airflow to kind of whisk away the moisture, and you don't want it sticking. So if you don't have that, it will probably stick. So you want some kind of material, basket, even just a regular bread basket will work. And the other thing is it's room temperature water. This water has not been heated. The starter was used straight from the refrigerator. I didn't let it come to room temperature. So those are some things I want to make sure that I make clear before we actually start making the bread. And that way, those are a few questions you might have as I'm going, and I wanted to clear them up before we even got into it. So let's get into making this loaf of bread. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is measure out our wheat berries. Today I'm using a combination of hard white and hard red. I am doing 350 grams of hard white and 150 grams of hard red. You probably, if it's your first time making it, you want to go with all hard white. But hard red does have a good protein count and develops gluten really well, so it can help with the strength of the dough. So let's turn on our scale. And I need to go to grams. And I'm going to do 350 hard white. Instead of tearing the scale, I'm just going to add up to 500 on the scale because we need 500 grams of wheat berries. And that makes 500 grams of flour. There we go. So now we're going to mill our 500 grams of wheat berries. I'm using the Nutri-Mill Classic, and I'm going to leave the top knob all the way over to the left. The bottom knob is going to be around between 10 and 11 o'clock on this bottom dial. If you're using the Impact, do it on either 2 or 3. If you're using the Harvest, go up to the 9 p.m. or 9 o'clock position. And if you're using the Wonder Mill, just use the bread function. Okay, now we're going to mix our dough. For reference of time, it's almost 8 a.m. So it's 10 till 8 in the morning. And so this is going to be mixing the dough. And keep in mind, when you mix the starter in like we're going to do right in the beginning, it's starting. Because that sourdough starter is going to start right away. So keep that in mind. We're going to do 350 grams of water. This is a lower hydration dough, but it's perfect for beginners to kind of learn the steps without it being so difficult to work with the dough. Still makes an absolutely beautiful loaf of bread. So we need 350 grams of water. And then tear your scale out. Now we're going to put our starter. I want to show you my starter. Really active and bubbly. I fed it with hard red wheat yesterday. So make sure that you're zeroed out on your scale and put 100 grams of active starter. Mine's kind of thick. I want to show you. It's kind of thick, But doing it by weight, it will be just fine. If your dough is just a little bit more slack than mine, that's fine. It won't make that much difference. I get a lot of questions about like the spoons, the bowls, and cleaning them, and I'm going to show you what I do. I grab a paper towel and wipe it off really well before. And the bowl, I will fill it up with soapy water and take it outside and pour it out. So it's just really important because it will stop up your sink if you pour sourdough and dough down your sink. So now we can do away with the scale because we already weighed out our flour with our wheat berries, and the salt is just 1.5 teaspoons. I think I have it in grams on the recipe, so if you need grams, it's on there. I think it's 9 or 11 grams. But what we're going to do is take a dough whisk, wooden spoon, fork, whatever you have, and just mix this starter into the water. And we have all of our freshly milled flour here, and we're going to pour it in. Just dump it in there. That's the beauty of weighing your ingredients. You don't have to add a little and then add a little bit more. It just works out. Then we'll do our 1.5 teaspoons of salt. You can always add less salt. If you're really sensitive to salt, you can do 1 teaspoon. Now we're going to mix it up. And if you do it right, you'll make a big mess like I did. I like to turn the bowl and clean the sides as it's coming together. And then at the very end, I take my hands and finish. So just make sure you got clean hands. And I'm not going to knead it, not at all. I want you to notice the dough is kind of tacky, but it's not like sticking to my hands really bad. And I purposely made the recipe that way so that it would be easier for you to work with. As you get better and better making sourdough bread, you can up that, of course, and make it a lot easier to work with. But this is perfect. This is how it should look. It's a little tacky, but I'm not getting completely stuck to the dough. I cleaned the sides pretty much with this dough, so I run it around. And now we're going to cover this with some plastic wrap or a damp tea towel. Now, if you use a tea towel, I want to tell you, check it regularly and re-wet it. I just realized my ice machine was on while I was talking, so sorry about the timing, or the sound. But anyways, I use these little plastic bowl covers from Amazon. I can link them down below if you're interested in them. But this is a really nice feeling dough. There's no big clumps of flour left, but it's not going to be smooth. It's going to be kind of raggedy, as you can see. That's exactly what you want. Now we're going to go into Autolyse. This is the time when you just let it sit for 30 minutes. Sometimes I do an hour, especially with freshly milled flour, but at least 30 minutes. And that's going to allow this flour to absorb all the water completely. And it is also going to soften the bran and germ if you're using fresh milled flour, so that you can start working the gluten without kind of defeating itself with the shards of bran and germ. So that is ready to sit for a little bit. You can pause the video if you want and then come back after either 30 minutes or an hour. You don't have to time it out perfect, but I do say at least 30 minutes. And just cover it, and we'll come back and do our first set of stretch and folds. Okay, so it has been about 40 minutes, and I'm going to do my first set of stretch and folds. What you're going to notice is that this dough is shaggy. It's not going to stretch very well, but this one just kind of gets it started. So don't worry if it's not stretchy. It's really not going to be on the first one. So here's our dough. Like I said, it's tacky. Now, you can either get a little bowl of water, dip your fingers in it, and do this. What I like is a spray bottle, and I just spray my hands. And the way this is going to work, you're going to lift up a corner of the dough and pull it over onto itself. Turn the bowl a quarter turn, and we're going to do that all the way around. You're gonna notice, like I said, it's not gonna be really stretchy yet. It's gonna break, but just do the best that you can. And I'm gonna show you me doing it so that you can get an idea of what that looks like. So we grab a corner of dough right here. We lift it up. Now I like to just kind of pat it like that as I'm lifting it, and as you can notice, it's stretching a little, but it's starting to get like it's going to tear. So I'm just going to flip it over, and now I'm going to go to the next corner. So if you see, I turned it here, I'm going to go to another corner, lift it up. I'll try to do it with one hand so you can see better. I lift it up and I just kind of shake it a little, and I'm being gentler than it looks. I'm not like jerking on it really hard. So I've got that lifted up and over. And I'm just going to do that all the way around. Don't be worried if yours isn't stretching even as much as mine. Depending on the flour you use. I mean, even hard white wheat from different places acts different. So don't worry. Sometimes when I use a different kind of wheat berry, it's different. So just get it as much as you can. But you can see that the gluten is already starting to work its way. The soaking actually helps with that. Now, how many times it takes to get around the bowl depends on how close together you do those. Some people do 4 corners, and I do just until it looks the way that I want it to look. So that's good. And I want to show you what it looks like. It's kind of rough looking. The dough is still kind of sticky. I want to show you though, it's just kind of shaggy still. Even after a set of stretch and folds, it's still shaggy. That's normal. That's your first one. Now wait 15 to 30 minutes and come back, and we're going to do this again. And we're going to do this about 6 times, or until it gets to that glossy, stretchy face that I will show you when we get there. And keep in mind, this dough is already fermenting. So we started at 8 a.m. It's been fermenting for 40 minutes. So kind of keep track of that so that you can kind of learn how long it takes your dough to ferment during this stage. We're going to cover it back up and revisit it in about 15 to 30 minutes. This is the second stretch and fold. It's been 20 minutes since I did the first one. No change really. But let's see if it stretches any better this time. So you can see it's already staying together. It's not as crumbly looking. It's already staying together. It feels strong. So there's already this difference after the first stretch and fold. So 20 minutes after that, look at the difference. You're able to pick it up a little higher. I mean, it's going out of the camera. So this is actually really good. You can see. Now, look, it broke. That's okay. I was just trying to see what the limits were, but it is more stretchy than it was with the first one. And just keep working your way around the bowl until you get it into a ball. One more. Now I want you to notice something when I get finished. Look how much smoother it's already looking. It's already starting to not look as raggedy. And it's not even as tacky as it was. So on your second stretch and fold, you should already be able to start seeing a difference in the feel of the dough and just the way that it looks. I'm already getting bubbles from fermentation, but it's smoother. It's not as raggedy looking as it was when we did our first one. So we'll let this sit for another 15 to 30 minutes, and then we'll come back for number 3. This is stretch and fold number 3. Now, if I get off on the numbers, please forgive me, because sometimes I get lost in the day and forget which one it is, but this is number 3, and it's been about 20 minutes, and we're going to do our stretch and folds. I want you to notice the dough stretching really nicely. It's not breaking at the top. Notice how I can just really go after it and it isn't breaking. That's a good sign that gluten is starting to develop and structure. Remember when I did the first one, I had to be really gentle with this part. Look at, I can really, it's getting its strength. And that structure helps it keep its shape, gives a good oven spring when you bake it. And I just want to try to do like a little window pane. We are getting so, this is just the third one. And the more you do, the better. There we had a little tear, so we know we're not quite there, which I knew that, but I just wanted to show you that. Now I want to have you look at this dough. I can touch it. It's just tacky. It is not, when I put my hand on it and come off, I don't have dough all over my hands. It is starting to get a smoothness to it, but we're not quite there yet. But you can notice a big difference between when we first started and the third stretch and fold. So we will come back to this in about 15-20 minutes and do stretch and fold number 4. This is number 4. I don't think I'm going to need the water this time, so I'm just going to I want to show you, it is pretty much passing the window pane test. So I'm still going to do 1 or 2 more. I do 5 or 6. It just makes it a better loaf of bread in the end. So we'll come back in about 20 minutes and do 1 more and decide if that is all that we're going to do before we just sit it aside to rise for the day. Okay, this is number 5. Dough's looking good. It's feeling good. After I get this one done, I'm going to just let it go ahead and ferment because it feels smooth. It's stretchy. And we are at the 2.5 hour mark of fermentation. So you see, the dough is very, very stretchy. It is, I can stretch it out. I can see through it. Right there's a hole I can see through, so this is good for me. So now what I do is I take this ball of dough, I turn it over, and I like to just kind of give it a little, you know, shape there. There's an air bubble on top. So I want you to look at the dough. It is soft. It's not sticking to my hands. I can hold it, mess with it. It is, when I press on it, it's not tacky. It's already starting to kind of feel a little bit airy. For reference, it's around 68 to 70 degrees here in my house. But that ball of dough is going to go back in the bowl. We're going to cover it up. And I'm not messing with it for a long time. It may be 6-8 hours before I come back to this. So when you get to this point, just put it in a somewhat, it doesn't have to be really warm. Now, if you have a really young starter, you may want to put it in a proofing box or put it in your oven with the light on, but the oven off. And just keep an eye on it, like every hour or two, just kind of do the little poke test, and we're going to do those together. But I will not check this dough for probably 4 hours. So that would be like 6 to 6.5 hours from when I first mixed the dough. So let's just let this hang out, do other things, and we'll come back to this later on this afternoon. Okay, I'm getting ready to shape my bread to put it in my basket in the refrigerator. One question that I got is, do you put your shaped loaf straight in the refrigerator? Yes, I will shape it, put it in here, and it goes straight in the refrigerator. This has been, oops, this has been 8 hours exactly, and I want to show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's my dough after 8 hours. You want it to be spread out. You can see there's air bubbles here. When I touch it, it feels full of air. Very puffy. We don't want to like punch it down like we would with yeast breads. We want to just gently get it onto our work surface and then shape it, because it takes so many hours to build all that and you don't really want to lose it. So this is what it looks like after 8 hours. There's no stickiness. It's not tacky at all anymore. Very manageable. I won't even need flour on the table for this. It is full of air. But let's get our basket ready first. I like to use rice flour, but you can use regular flour. It doesn't matter. I like rice flour because it does seem to not absorb the moisture as much, and so it doesn't stick at all really. But it's up to you, whatever you have. If you don't have rice flour, just put rice through your meal and you can have an unlimited supply. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over on the table carefully. I like to kind of go around the bowl a little at first, just to kind of loosen it up. And just gently. There we go. And as you can see, a very fermented dough. Very puffy. Very puffy. So to shape it, there's so many different like techniques and things, but I'm just going to show you what I do. I just gently get it into kind of a triangle, and I take a corner and I pull it up and pull it in, and then I take the other corner, pull it up and pull it in, and then you got this little horn that you can start rolling. This dough is, I meant to get to it about an hour ago, but you know. Now I'll turn this over and just kind of tuck the ends in and just kind of get it somewhat sealed before I pull it on the table. Now pulling it, dragging it across the table seals this, and it also builds tension. As you can see, it needs it. It needs to be tightened, because this part of it, getting this tension right, makes a big difference in how much rice you're going to get in the morning when you bake it. So just take your hands, grab behind it, and pull on it. Now don't do this like so much that it rips the top. I've done that before. Just a few times is all that it takes. I just like to kind of tuck in the ends and pull it toward me. Move it back, tuck in the ends. As you can see, we're getting a better shape every time. There's lots of bubbles. And that feels good to me. Now what I'm going to do is put it in the basket. I'm going to flip it and put it, this side will go down into the basket. But I'm going to put a little bit of this rice flour on top first. You can always dust off the flour, but if you don't flour enough and it sticks, your bread's pretty much ruined. So I suggest flouring it really well. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of rub that around. And I'm going to flip it toward me and put it in this basket. And let me show you how I do that. I just put my hands here first to kind of get it loose from the table, and then I flip it over, and then I lift it up and put it in the basket. Now, this is important. You want to just kind of make sure that you tighten up these edges here. You see that? How that you can kind of see that? I just kind of pull it over more. This also builds tension in the top of that dough before you put it in the fridge. You just want to make sure that you got it pretty well tightened up, buttoned up, I guess you could say. Lots of bubbles. It's not over fermented. This is what I would call just right. It'll be jiggly. I don't know if you can see that, but when you get it right, it's full of air and it's jiggly. Now, more flour. I just kind of like to go in here on the sides and just, believe me, if you've ever had one stick to a basket, you'll do this too. And a little bit on top so nothing sticks to it, just a little. Now I'm going to put my plastic on top. And I'm going to lift it up and make sure that it's not touching anywhere. Alright, so I'm going to put this in the refrigerator right now. And then I will bake it off tomorrow. And we'll have our loaf of bread. This is so exciting. If your dough still isn't fermented at 8 hours, if it doesn't feel like it's full of air, just leave it sitting. It's not going to hurt anything. It may take yours longer. Yours may have been full of air at 4 or 5 hours, but our house fluctuates the temperature. Like it was like around 70 and then it was around 66 and it kind of fluctuates. And so it took a little bit longer than usual today, but I also I should have called it maybe an hour earlier, but it's perfectly fine. So this will go in the refrigerator all night long. It's going to be in the fridge for at least 14 hours. At least. Probably more than that. Maybe 15, 16. So from start to finish, this is going to be a 24-hour process. And so that gives you an idea on how to time everything out. But I'm going to put this in the refrigerator and I will see you all tomorrow. Good morning. I have my dough here and it rose quite a bit in the fridge. Nice and airy and puffy. Now what I like to do, since I used extra rice flour, I do use one of these silicone holders here. And so I like to do it over top of this because I'm going to brush some of that rice flour off. My oven is preheated to 450 degrees. I have a roasting pan, one of the blue roaster pans in there, but you, of course, can use your Dutch oven. So I'm going to turn this dough onto this, brush it off, and score it, and then we're going to get it in the oven. So I like to lay it on there and grasp it here. And then it'll just come right out because we floured it really well. Now I'm going to just brush some of this off. When it's properly fermented, it's not going to spread out. It's just going to stand there and hold its shape. That is exactly what you want. Now you don't have to use, of course, one of these slings. You can just use parchment paper. I like these though. It's easy to lift them in and out. So when it comes to scoring, I use a razor blade. I know that probably doesn't seem safe, but that's what I use. And I like to just make 3 simple cuts. We're going to go about 3/4 inch deep or so and go at kind of a 45-degree angle. And just kind of do it with purpose. Okay, so I'm just going to take the lid off. It's very steamy. I'm going to hurry up and get my bread in here. There we go. Get the lid back on. This is going to go in the oven for 20 minutes with the lid on. So there is the beginner freshly milled sourdough artisan loaf. I have to say that going through this course, like actually doing the course, I've learned some things, and I'm excited to do the Q&A next week. Leave your questions down below. I'm going to go back through the videos. I'm going to write down all the questions, and I'm going to answer every single question I can get to within a certain time frame. And I also want you to take pictures of your loaf that you made and put them on my Instagram. I'm going to leave my Instagram page down below and share them with me, and I will put them on my stories, and everybody can see your creation. If you had problems with this loaf, reach out to me. Leave a comment down below. We'll troubleshoot together because I want you to succeed. I want you to have a beautiful loaf like this one. And I realize that many of you, your starters may not be quite as vigorous as mine. So most of the time it's a starter issue if it didn't rise. But still reach out. Let's go through everything. I hope that I went step by step enough that it was an easy process for you to make this loaf of bread. Again, next week we're going to do the last module, and that is the Q&A. So flood me with your questions. You can leave me questions, comment on this one. I will go back through and look at those. You can also leave questions over on our Facebook group, Fresh Milled Sourdough, and I will go through those and get as many as I can. If I don't answer your question, you can always send it to me through a Facebook message or Instagram message, and I'll be happy to answer it for you. But that is a fresh milled sourdough loaf, start to finish, and I am so excited to see your results with this loaf of bread. All right, well, we've come to the end of this module or this course, and I hope that it has been helpful to you. I hope that you have learned a lot about freshly milled flour and sourdough, and you feel more empowered to be successful with this journey. I will be adding some extra bonus modules over the next few weeks, so they will be added to this playlist, so keep an eye out for those. I just did one for getting fine flour out of the harvest grain mill, and I'm going to do one about converting your starters to fresh milled flour. All right, well, that is it. We made our first loaf of bread. Very exciting. Please, please, please share your pictures with me on Instagram. I am so excited to see your results. All right, well, we'll see you next week, same day, same time.